Thank you and good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Lori Schwaller, and I'm here to introduce you to the Tulare County Treasures Project and to the website, Tulare County Treasures, A Legacy of Land and People. My better half, Greg Schwaller, our webmaster and videographer, is on the computer, and 4 other members of our all-volunteer TCT team will be speaking with you this evening, and you'll meet the whole team later on the website. We are thrilled that the chat theme this year is placed, because that's what our project is all about. The wonderful places and the visionary people that make up the 125-year history of conservation in our big, beautiful county. We want to walk you through the website first. That should answer many of your questions about the project, and you'll also see how the website works. It can be a great resource for you and your family, your friends, even your business. For all the times you get asked, what else is there to see and do around here? And we'll show you how to quickly and easily get dozens of great answers to that question any day of the year. At the end of our presentations, we'll be glad to get your feedback and to answer any questions that you might have. So let's start on the home page. Our mission, as you can see, is to celebrate, educate, and inspire by telling the stories of the many dozens of special places, including natural lands, farms, ranches, buildings, cultural and historic sites, and markers of significant locations that have been officially conserved in Tulare County and are open to the public at least some of the time. These treasures are a living heritage. They conserve the beauty, history, resources, culture, and diversity of Tulare County, contributing greatly to our quality of life, and they bring us visitors from around the world. Their aesthetic, educational, historical, recreational, scientific, economic, and ecological values are protected for all of us and for generations to come, to share and to enjoy. You can enlarge any of the pictures on the website with a click, and up at the top of the home page you'll see a search. If you type in the name of a treasure or a person there, then you can find all the places on the website where that name appears. Also up at the top of the page, there is a sub-tab, What's New on the website. When you click there, you can see what's been added since your last visit. For example, just this week, we published our 42nd article. It's on Blue Oak Ranch Preserve. How many people have ever heard of it? New treasure to explore. Also, in May, we published our 12th video. It's on Dry Creek Preserve. Have you been there? Good story. We also have a TCT Facebook page, Tulare County Treasures Facebook. New publications on the website are announced there, and also events at various treasure sites. And John Greening manages our page, and he updates it often, so we hope that you'll visit it often too. Next, let's go to the treasure tales. After the introduction, you'll find an alphabetical list of all the treasures that we plan to cover. The ones that are shown in green already have articles. If you just click on those, you'll go straight to their web pages. And now for the treasure tales themselves. These are the actual articles and sometimes videos that we have completed to date about individual treasures. Again, they're in alphabetical order. They have a little V next to them if there's a video included on their page. Let's look at one of those individual pages so that you can see the features that are included. We'll visit Porterville's Tulare River Parkway. How many of you have walked the parkway? Oh, that's a small percentage. And today would have been a great day out there. Notice that each page has a standard introductory header with some basic information about the treasure, such as its environment, whether it's located in the valley, in the foothills, or in the mountains. The activities that you can enjoy there, when it's open, who stewards it and how to contact them, and links to related information. There's a photo gallery for every one of them. You can run it as a slideshow. You can stop at any time that you want to. You can also enlarge the individual pictures by clicking on them. We have recorded video interviews for 16 treasures so far, and we've published 12 completed videos. They're each around 4 minutes long. All of the Treasure Tales pages include an article. This one is written by Nancy Bruce. How many people have been to Circle J? You know Nancy. Photos of the treasure site and relevant quotations accompany the articles, and at the bottom of the page, you'll find an interactive map and directions for how to get there. Now let's move on to maps and tours. After the introduction, you will find our interactive maps. There's a county-wide map that shows you all the treasures that we plan to cover. And this will make it really easy for you to plan visits to the treasures. You'll see that there are 2 colors of pins. The red pins mark the treasures for which we have already published articles and sometimes videos on the website. The yellow pins show you treasures with articles still to come. You'll find that some areas, such as Porterville, which is outstanding, are rich in treasures. And on those, because the pins get so crowded together, you need to blow up the map with the plus sign so that you'll be sure to see all the pins in that area. When you click on a red pin, you'll see the treasure's name, and if you click on more info, you'll go right to that treasures page. If you click on Zoom to, you'll get a more detailed map view of the treasure's location. If you click on a yellow pin, you'll get a message that an article will be coming soon. You'll notice that the county-wide map is divided into 4 quadrants: northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest treasures. That's because our county is so big that we divided it up so that you could see more graphically which treasures are where. This is also very helpful for trip planning because you can see where they're grouped together in a particular area. However, remember, the quadrant maps will show you only treasures for which articles are already published. And also, unfortunately, some computers and internet connections are slow to load the quadrant maps. So if yours is slow, just stick to the countywide map or try your smartphone. If you click on any quadrant name, for example, Southwest, where Porterville is, you'll see a map of the quadrant on the right of all the treasures in that quadrant that have a published article. On the left, you'll see a photo for each of those treasures with the corresponding numbers, and that will give you, if you click on them, a preview of what you'll see there. From either the markers or the photos, you can access the treasures pages with all that information that we have about them in the header section, the articles, the maps, and directions. For quick previews, if you click on any of the photos, you'll get a 90-word description of the treasure, kind of like a little preview, and information about where it is and when it's open. And under the Maps and Tours tab, you'll find 2 more sets of information. One is treasures sorted by activities and interests. So whatever you want to do, alphabetically, from archaeology to wildlife viewing, go to that activity or interest, you'll find the treasures where you can enjoy those things. You can find interesting things to see and to do any day of the year in Tulare County. Next, under Maps and Tours, we have the treasures sorted by communities. So we list by community treasures that are located either within the community or for which that community is the gateway or the nearest town. So that means that for some treasures, they could be listed in more than one town. Once again, some communities, like Porterville, are treasures hotspots. Have you already visited all of the ones near Porterville? You have a treasure trove. There are so many places to discover and explore in Tulare County. And for the big picture, on all of these special places, we have a treasures timeline. And this section outlines the 125-year history of conservation in our county. It includes in italics significant historic events that provide context for our heritage of treasures. For example, on the 1800s page, you'll find Visalia being established as the county seat in 1853, and Sequoia National Park being created in 1890. Our county's second national park, and it was created largely through the efforts of the citizens of Visalia. How many people know what our country's third national park was?
Yosemite.
Wrong! Close. Small, 4 square miles.
General Grant.
Excellent. General Grant National Park, 4 square miles. When Kings Canyon National Park was established, General Grant was incorporated within it. But the second and third national parks in our country were both right here in Tulare County. We also have a future treasures section, and it outlines how to nominate a treasure that meets the 4 criteria for being included in this website. We hope that every community in Tulare County may find at least one treasure to share along its streets or on the landscape nearby, and that we will be adding every year to this inspiring legacy of land and people. We also have an About Us section, and there you will meet our all-volunteer Treasures Project team. We had our 50th meeting in April, and last month we started our 6th year of working together. On the mission page, you'll learn about our mission to celebrate, educate, and inspire by sharing these stories of land and people. And on our project history page, you'll read a little bit about what we're up to. We're a small group of volunteers who wanted to discover and share the stories of the amazingly diverse places that have been conserved all over our county, and of the dedicated people who have worked to conserve and steward them. So far, we've posted 42 articles and 12 videos to our website. We have dozens more treasures still to cover. But actually, we're hoping that this website will never be finished, as new treasures may be added year by year. We visualize a wide audience for the treasures pages, and we do believe there is a treasure for everyone in Tulare County. We also think that the project will continue to grow through the interest and contributions of our citizens, and that it will also continue to build enjoyment of and pride in Tulare County and these treasures which so enhance our quality of life. We greatly appreciate the support and assistance that the project has received from numerous individuals and organizations so far. And if you should happen to be interested in volunteering to work on this project, or if you or your organization would like to partner with or sponsor the project, or you'd like to schedule a presentation from us, then please contact us. We always welcome your questions, your suggestions, assistance, and even corrections. However, if you have questions, such as when a particular campground is going to open this year, or whether you can schedule a student tour on a particular date, or whether you can be married at your favorite treasure, please contact the site steward directly. When you need current, detailed, specific information, contact the site steward. TCT does not own, manage, maintain, or operate a single treasure, only a website. The Treasures Project is an appreciation of and a tribute to these special places and to those special people who have worked to conserve and steward them. It is our gift to this legacy and to you. Whether you tell a friend, you take your family, follow us on Facebook, pass along the website, send in your favorite photo, volunteer, or discover, conserve, or share a new treasure, you are part of this living legacy of land and people. Thank you for visiting the website with us tonight, and we hope you'll share it with your family and friends and visitors. And now, John Greening, TCT author, naturalist, Facebook manager, and our best photographer. How many people have bookmarks? That's John's photo. He's going to introduce himself and one of his favorite treasures.
Thank you, Lori. I got into this for the photography part of it. I didn't know about the website. I didn't know any of these people 5 years ago. Has it been that long? Anyway, I heard that they were looking for some photos to go with this web page that they were planning. It hadn't even been launched yet. So I volunteered and showed up and met them. It sounded really great because I love to go out of doors into natural areas and take photos. And so they were doing all the hard work. They were doing the research. They were putting all the web page together, and I was out taking pictures. And it was really fun. And then they said, well, you need to do more than that. You need to do a web page, one of the treasures yourself. And I says, okay, I can do that. I always had an interest in history. And so, well, which one? And I think Lori says, well, Salad House in Portugal's one. And I said, the what? How many of you know about the Salad House in Portugal? Good. Good. Hopefully I won't make too many mistakes about this one, because I want to talk to take you through what I went through to get to this one. It was not difficult at all. I came over, and one of the things I've most enjoyed about doing the research part of it is, one, meeting the people that are the stewards for the site. Heather Huerta is the curator for the Salad House, and was more than accommodating. And part of what we try to do is, with these historical sites, is include some historical photos. And sometimes that's an incredible treasure hunt trying to find those. She was superb. She took pictures off the wall, took them out of the frames, and says, yeah, you want to photograph it? Fine. I says, well, can I touch it? She says, sure. So it works really well. And the other thing that I really enjoyed is, in a way, meeting the people that lived in these sites or conserved them or had some historical connection with them. Because they often have some fascinating stories that I never knew about. And so let me take you through one of them. This is the house that's on Hockett and Morton, I believe. The Zalids came from Tulare in about 1888. At the time, Tulare was a boom town. The railroad had come to town, there was a huge payroll there, and the family had a restaurant and a gambling hall right next to it to take care of the railroad workers, food and gambling, and liquor. The railroad didn't leave Porterville, but it took a huge payroll down to Bakersfield when they were going to build the railroad over the Tehachapies. And so Tulare just almost collapsed about 1888, 1889. So the family moved to Porterville. There was a brother here, and they opened up a saloon on Main Street. I love these old pictures. John Zalad, the patriarch of the family here, is in the center there. There was a 24-hour-a-day, never-closed saloon. There was Scotty's Chop House next door, just south of it on Main Street, connecting door. And most importantly for the Zalids, there was a card room behind. And John did really well with cards. He won so much that he won entire ranches and made not a small fortune, but he ended up owning a lot of land around this part of the county. And so they built this house in 1891, and it was a little unusual because of the roof. This is what's called a mansard roof. It's from the Empire period in France, and it was going out of fashion in the United States, but I think it reminded them of their homeland because John and Mary Jane, the mother and father of this family, had immigrated from Bohemia, which is in modern the Czech Republic, earlier in the 19th century. They built this house with this very unusual looking roof, double walls. We think about air conditioning now. They have 2 layers of brick with air in between. Beautiful, for keeping cool in the summer and warm in the winter. The family had 3 surviving children. You see the parents on one side there, and the eldest daughter, the eldest child, Anna, and her husband, William Brooks. There were 3 children. The house is really unusual in that most historic homes like this usually get sold when the family gets on bad times or moves away. No one ever lived in this house except this family. And all the furnishings in the house, all the clothing in the house, are all theirs. So often when these historic homes are open to the public, they scrounge for old toasters and old gowns and old bed coverings from all over the county and all over the state. This is all of theirs. It's a really unusual situation. The husband, William, worked for National Cash Register. It's now called NCR and makes a lot of those terminals that you find in markets for credit cards and things like that. But it was cash registers back in the day. The family had a really rough decade from 1912 to 1922, because in 1912, the mother that you saw before died of tuberculosis. 5 years later, the son-in-law, William, who was quite a ladies' man, living up in Oakland with his wife, made advances toward someone else's wife, and she wouldn't have nothing to do with him. So he started telling stories about her, that she was immoral. And this was more than 100 years ago. And so trashed her reputation. Well, she had a nervous breakdown. She had some connections, she had some land or something in the Porterville area here. She came back to town, bought a pistol, was seriously considering suicide. There was an old Pioneer Hotel downtown. She was walking through the hotel, and there was William sitting and laughing at her. She pulled out the gun that she just bought and shot him 4 times. Sat down and waited for the police. Went to trial, pleaded not guilty, and was acquitted. Justifiable homicide. If you go to the house, you go upstairs, and in the bedroom, and the next one, you will see the chair over in the corner, and you can count the bullet holes. This is the rocker that he was in the Pioneer Hotel when he was shot. So there's a lot of these old artifacts in there. There was there was a son, 1 son, 2 daughters and 1 son. The next one is Edward's son, Edward. He was worked with his father in the saloon, also managed a lot of the ranches. In the 19-teens, there was this period called Prohibition. In other words, not a real good situation if you own a saloon. The selling liquor was illegal. So, son Edward bought every bottle of booze he could find in the county, hauled them off and stored them in one of his ranches, and then gradually started feeding them back into various saloons and restaurants in town. And it's what I've been frustrated with and interested in doing this local history is how difficult it is to find out actually what happened. Because you hear stories about this and stories about that. Here you see Edward with a horse. Mother died in 1912. Brother-in-law in 1917. 1922, in the middle of the night, he fell off his horse along the riverbank someplace and got kicked in the head and died. That's one story. Then there was another story about, well, he was running booze that night and there was some conflict with another group that, in terms of the alcohol. And so it's often very hard to establish exactly what happened, even if it was only 100 years ago. The next one shows his bedroom, and there's the saddle that was on the horse that bucked him off and killed him. So within 10 years, 3 of the 6 family members were gone. The remaining one was Pearl. And Pearl was a pianist. She never married. She went from Porterville. She was, I think, in the first class of Porterville High School in the 1890s. She went to the New England Conservatory of Music to study piano, and then came back and gave lessons. She was the only member that survived she's lived up until 1970, I believe. As I said, never married. She and her father traveled all over the world. So the house is full of Oriental rugs, Persian rugs, objects from Japan, China, Southeast Asia. She spent a lot of time in Los Angeles with her sister, and then when the sister died, she moved back into the downstairs bedroom. She loved the gardens. There's quite a bit of gardens around the house, and so she loved the rose bushes in the garden, but was a little bit reclusive, was not totally isolated from the community, but was not an active participant. This is the downstairs bedroom where she lived. She died in 1970 and had an estate of $1.5 million and no descendants. So some of the ranches went to friends, but for Porterville, she gave them several $100,000, 15 acres, and the house, with the understanding the house would be preserved. The 15 acres you probably know as Zealot Park in town. And it took about 7 years. There was some legal problems, but the city had to rehabilitate the house. There was a lot of work that had to be done with it. But then it was open to the public. And a few years later was put on the National Register of Historic Buildings. But as I said, as you go through the house, the next couple in here, I think we have, the main room. It looks like many older historical homes, but it's all theirs. This is all the stuff that they owned. Next one. And the kitchen, they did a lot of cooking in here, one of the center parts of the house. There's a bedroom, the next one with upstairs and travel clothes. And finally we have a stairway. Pearl thought that she heard voices in the house. Family members that were long gone. And she was quite a believer in this. So when you visit the house, talk to the curator. There are tapes recorded upstairs at night. But I'll let Heather tell you the story when you go see the house. There are a number of places around county in our treasures that are historical buildings. We have a lot of parks that are treasures as well as preserves. But the Fox Theater in Visalia, the Buck Rock Fire Lookout, there's a Polk Hotel in Lemon Cove that you've probably driven by and never seen. Check them out. They're really interesting places with fascinating histories. So, who's up next?
My name is Louise Jackson, and I come from an old family from the whole area here. One of my great-grandfathers was one of the first preachers in Porterville, in this area. Another one went to Visalia, and places up above that. So it's an old family, the Crowley family and the Gillum family, and the names haven't really, well, the Crowleys have, but they're kind of dying out. One of the things I really want to talk about is, because I was raised with it, having come from an old family, is we don't think about how important our county has been in the history of the entire nation. And it's been a leader in a lot of areas and continues to be, and I want us to think about it, why it has been. And there's really one reason why, and that is something that's on all of our minds all the time right now: water. We are one of the rare ones in a Mediterranean climate that has water. And the biggest reason, even more than the rest of the whole land here, is because of the mountains that were raised so high in our part. At one point, they were the summit of the Sierra Nevada. And so It's our mountains that bring the water, that creates the absolute beautiful agriculture that is everywhere, and almost always now, carrying it to where we are now in today. We are almost always in the nation #1 or #2 county in agricultural productivity. The mountains, and that's where I'm going to talk about the treasures we have here a little bit, and then the very necessary part of why we need conservation. Those mountains were raised geologically in an amazing way. I won't go into it, but they rose higher than almost any, and when a mountain rises, along with it come minerals that seep up through the cracks from down below. So our mountains were always filled with a lot of minerals, a lot of nutrition, so to speak. And that became soil. They were a part of it. Those minerals are part of what make our land so rich here in Tulare County because of the height of the mountains and how much soil is washed down, because they are so steep here at this point. And so the mountains are extremely important, and the conservation of them is too. What is it about the steepness that makes a difference? They collect the storms. They collect the storms, they bump up, and they collect them to be able to seep more slowly down to the valley most of the time. Sometimes floods take the minerals down to help refurbish the soil for the crops to grow well. And what keeps them as a reservoir? The trees. Without the trees, it would all wash down, and we wouldn't have it seep down into what become aquifers down here in the valley. And so that is really important too. And with that, the trees having some idea of the conservation, well, what we are celebrating on our site here with the conservation are different places in the mountains, and we include the foothills. John mentioned one of them, but there are 13 that are now listed on our site that are conservation efforts in areas just because it is so important to the well-being of our county. None of us would be here without the mountains. It's really that simple. This is desert without the mountains. So they are important. The government owns, and most people don't realize this, the government owns almost 2/3 of Tulare County. And so it is a very important part of the conservation issue as to why we need to conserve through government. We tend to be a little bit independent here. We're Westerners, and we love to say bad things about the government. But when we say government, we mean city, county, state, as well as federal. And they take care of a lot of the conservation in our area. Not only that, but we have conservation groups that came around actually from the 1920s on. And they made some huge differences in what was conserved in the mountains, and people understanding that if we don't conserve our trees, if we don't conserve our lands of the wild, Tulare County is not going to be productive anymore, and we'll be without jobs. So the conservation effort is really important there. In the past, in the beginning, it wasn't that way. The vast resources of Tulare County and even all over the West were considered to be open land. They were utilized, they felt, to create wealth and opportunity. And the Tulare County area of the Sierra Nevada was prime. It was just filled with beautiful trees, including sequoia, janga, and tia. And they were cutting them rapidly. One of the ones that I am so interested in that was conserved, it's going to be the one that I talk about here, and that is right in your back door here. It is the Mountain Home State Park. Has any of you gone up to investigate the Mountain Home State Park? There are a few of you who have, and that's wonderful because Mountain Home is such a very special place. It has an interesting story. Mountain Home State Park, in the beginning, was just a land that was actually opened up to recreation and mostly lumbering. There was a lot of it that went on, but it was on a small scale. And so it was opened up, and small people, one man in particular in that area was a man by the name of Dude Such. And he first started out just cutting down redwood trees. And then he started cutting down the trees themselves just a little bit as he saw that there was a demand for it. In 1941, this all changed. It was when the Michigan Trust Company got hold of it, a big corporation came in. And in 1941, the fellow who was the CEO of the company decided that there wasn't any way to make a profit anymore. Number one, we were at war. And the whole thing was really bad. He wasn't going to get a buyer. He didn't even hardly try. But he needed to get rid of the land. And so what happened was he was a very, very clever man. And he thought, I know what I need to do. I need to get the government to buy it. How am I going to get the government to buy this? Well, first of all, I'll offer it to them. And the 4,800 acres that comprised the land that the Michigan Trust Company had in the middle of nowhere, basically. And so he said, all right, I will offer it to them, and I'm not sure if it's going to work. They turned him down. The National Forest Service turned him down. And with that, he said, well, I'll go to Plan B. He hired Dude Such to go and start cutting down sequoia trees. Dude Such did it. Didn't look like enough. The Forest Service wasn't buying into anything. So he hired two large lumbering companies to start cutting down trees. And in the long run, they cut down thousands upon thousands of sequoia trees in that 4,800 acres. Well, it wasn't long before the citizens began to get upset. And at one point, there were 40 citizens groups that got together to try to stop this, along with individuals. So they started doing a big campaign, and the Forest Service still said, we don't have the money, the war is going on, we cannot do this. The National Forest Service, no one would buy into it. The private individuals, no. And finally, one man, and so often these different places get down to one person. One man made a difference. He went to the state of California and said, you have to buy this. And he talked the legislature into buying what became the first California state park. And it still remains a park today. A demonstration park that is really interesting because it does so many good things. They do the development of sustainable cutting practices, regeneration of the sequoias. They implement tree planting and natural fertilization and thinning techniques, creation of beneficial burn practices, the study of animal and human effects, All are part of the experimental studies of this forest. The findings are then turned and shared with the forester, other foresters, and the public. And whatever they cut, because part of it is cutting, does not go to profit. It goes to education for everybody else. So it is a success out of something that was absolutely, totally done out of meanness. Sometimes it isn't always the good heart that makes good things happen. Thank you. Pardon me. The next one is going to be Shirley Kirkpatrick, who is an old Tulare County person in her own right.
She got the emphasis on old, didn't she? Good evening. It's really our pleasure to be here and tell you about ourselves and our site. And you can see that we've come from varied backgrounds and interests. Well, my interest is lifelong interest in agriculture, and my career interest was ag journalism. So I'm going to talk about agriculture for you tonight. But education, as you've noticed, is a very important part of our mission for the treasure site. So since we're in this beautiful upper place of education, I'm going to pull the role of a teacher and I'm going to give you a pop quiz. So how many of you know that Tulare County is the highest agricultural income producing county in the nation? You pretty much know that. Now, how many of you know that Los Angeles County was, not so very long ago, the top ranking ag county in the state? Well, that's a fact, and the facts change, don't they? And what happened to Los Angeles? It got paved over. The urbanization just took out all the ag and the people moved away, and there are people in cars and smog and stuff in Los Angeles County. I'm not a fan of Los Angeles. But Tulare County, I believe, is still at a point where we can not follow that example and we can do a little more conservation. So I did get the opportunity to spend 20 years on the Tulare County Ag Planning Commission, and that was one of our goals, to keep the resources that ag needs, the land, air, and water, to be successful. So we have some of our sites, our hillside sites, preserves, allow cattle grazing, which is agriculture, but there are only 2 sites on the San Joaquin Valley floor, on the Tulare County floor. The rich farmland that have conservation easements. So how did those come about? It wasn't really because the county wanted to necessarily to preserve those. It was because of a state law. So when Visalia wanted to widen the road that leads from Visalia to Dinuba, Road 80, cuts through miles and miles of rich farmland, the state said, in order to mitigate the loss of the land that you're taking on both sides of the widening, you need to compensate by placing conservation easements on a like amount of property. So they turned it over to Sequoia River Lands Trust, and they immediately found 2 farmers willing, eager, and able to trade their development rights on their property. They promised they would never develop it. It would stay farmland forever in return for the conservation easement. And those 2 are Jim Moore and Paul Buxman east of Kingsburg. They were feeling the pressure of urbanization and they were glad to kind of slow it down. So you won't find Jim Moore on the website because of our criteria that the treasure has to be open at least part of the time to the public. So Sweet Home Ranch, Paul Buxman and his wife Ruth open their farm every year the 2 days following Thanksgiving with a harvest festival and tours and show the folks around their ranch. Paul Buxman is more than just a farmer. He is, and I'm going to read you what it says there. He's a famous artist. You can see his pictures. He's a musician, he's a teacher, he's a mentor. He's a father of the 4th generation, Wyatt. He's a rural philosopher and a visionary. And I would just invite you to go to his website when you have an opportunity and let him tell you the story of why he thinks ag land conservation is important and why he did it. And he does it beautifully, and you'll enjoy it, I think. But before I quit, I just want to give you a quick quote from that he said that I find very interesting. Before we approve another kind of industry on top of farmland, let's think, what will our legacy be? It will be that we are the fruit basket, the bread basket, we are the milk carton, we are the raisin capital. Let's be what we were intended to be. This San Joaquin Valley is like no other place on earth. Thank you. And I'm going to tonight with Paul Hurley, who is
Okay, definitely.
all right.
You told me. I'm last because I got the short straw, right? My name's Paul Hurley. I'm a journalist for about 35 years, working with the project for about 5. Most lately, the opinion page editor of the Visalia Times Delta. I like writing about things. I like delving into history, and especially exploring unique places. The other group each focused on one place. I want to run through a few. You've only looked at 3. We've got a list of more than 100, and we've written about more than 40. So there's a lot there to deal with. But I want to share just a little bit about 5 places, and they have in common this: they're all just blank pieces of land. There are no buildings on them. They're not developed for any particular reason. Nobody cultivates them. Well, I shouldn't say that about Bravo Lake. There might be some cultivation there. But they were preserved for their own sake, because they're open land, and because people saw that there was a need to keep this land the way it is. And that's the other thing that's common about them. They all have somebody who was behind them that had to work at it to make sure these places were conserved and preserved. The first one is right here in your backyard, Yodanchi Ecological Preserve. This is basically a really, really big vacant lot. If you know a little bit about the history of it, it was a piece of land that was owned by the Porterville State Hospital, which is now the Porterville Developmental Center. And it was used as their dump, basically. And part of it is their sewer farm. And after a while, they didn't need it anymore. So Porterville State College decided, okay, we're gonna get rid of this, we're gonna maybe sell it to a farmer, or we're gonna do something. And a bunch of people here in Porterville said, no, we don't want to do that. Let's keep this land, let's save it, because they discovered it was a rookery for blue heron. Anybody seen blue heron? Beautiful birds, large, wading birds. They're not endangered, but they're fairly rare. And they made this place their home. A whole bunch of people saw some value in saving that for those birds and for other species on this land. Yodanchi Ecological Preserve is really unique in the fact that a whole bunch of different and usually competing interests worked together to make sure that this place was saved. You had the hospital itself, your community, the Boy Scouts, the Tule Indian River Tribe, the Sierra chapter of the Safari Club, several members of the legislature, including our local assembly person, and a number of others. And they all got together and they convinced the assembly to give this what was state land, preserve it, reserve it, and keep it as a place that would just thrive for its own sake, so that the critters and the foliage, etc., that live there would continue to live there. And forever, we hope. That's what happened right here in Porterville. One of the other places that I'd like to call your attention to is a place I'm sure none of you have been to, the Hog Wallow Preserve. Hog wallows are an interesting sort of geographical feature. If you go to the field where the Hog Wallow Preserve is, it looks like an ocean, a wave of dirt covered with mounds. This is kind of like the way a lot of Tulare County looked 150, 200 or more years ago. It was just grassland with these kind of rolling little hills. And it's a bit of a mystery because people aren't quite exactly sure how they got these little hills, these humps. It's a field that's full of humps. And they suspect that it might have been created by rodents. And they create little pockets of area where water can collect when it does rain, and other aquatic creatures can thrive, and it has a kind of a very unique ecological character itself. The reason there's some of this left at all in Tulare County is because of its owner. And he was a doctor from Visalia, Dr. Buckman. And he was a very successful doctor, and he bought a large parcel of land east of Visalia, just north of Exeter, where the Hog Wallow Preserve is now. And he used some of his land to grow citrus. He used part of his land to graze cattle, and other of his land to enjoy it. Gradually, all his neighbors started evening out their hog wallows, flattening the land so that they could grow citrus mostly, but other crops. And eventually they came to Dr. Buckman and said, Doctor, why don't you flatten your land out too and grow citrus on it like we all do it? And he said, no, I like it the way it is. This is the way it used to be, and I want to keep it this way. I won't bore you with the whole details because it took decades, but the Buckman family finally worked to keep this particular piece of property, the Hog Wallow Preserve, but the family worked hard to keep that as it was. And that's another feature of a lot of the treasures. Families or individuals working passionately over many years to preserve some of these things. Next place I want to take you to is near Wood Lake. Now this is a little different because they do grow things there. Bravo Lake Botanical Garden is really right in the heart of the city of Wood Lake. How many of you have been there? People, Olga and Emmanuel Jimenez worked to preserve this piece of property, the Bravo Lake Botanical Garden. It's a stretch of property that actually rings Bravo Lake, and it's practically, as I said, in downtown Wood Lake. It was just sort of ignored for a long time. The lake was there, and stuff grew around it, but nobody was paying much attention to it. Until Olga and Manuel decided, we can use some of this land to teach kids how to grow things, to teach them some respect for the land, to teach them about our agricultural heritage and our land. So they went to the city council and said, we'd like to take part of this and make a garden out of it. And they said, sure, Manuel and Olga, go ahead, knock yourselves out. Because they didn't really expect that this was going to happen. Well, Manuel and Olga mobilized, especially a lot of youth in Wood Lake, in an organization called Wood Lake Pride. And again, I'm not going to go through all the details of how it happened, but they had hundreds of volunteers, most of them young people. They created a diverse garden around Bravo Lake, and Manuel was especially suited to do this because he worked for the University of California Cooperative Extension. He's a botanist by trade and training, and he has tried to bring in native plants as well as the entire spectrum of agricultural production that is here in our valley. It's a great place to visit for a walk or just to smell the roses, and especially in the spring where they have their, I think it's in June, they have their annual berry festival. and you can sample a lot of the produce that they actually grow at Bravo Lake Botanical Garden. We're gonna go next down to Lewis Hill. Everybody know what Lewis Hill is? Part of it is preserved. And this might be the most interesting story of the ones I'm gonna relate to you, because Lewis Hill was a farm, a working farm. The Hawkins family ran cattle and grew citrus. They had migrated from Southern California, Orange County, I believe. Some of these details, read the story. I'm not going to go into all the details, but the Hawkins family had this farm for a number of years. One of the Hawkins members, Cole Hawkins, worked at this farm during the summers, and he lived there for a while. And he noticed that Lewis Hill had an amazing diversity of wildflowers, as well as a number of other critters that lived there. And he determined he was going to find out more about them. Long story short, Cole Hawkins had such an obsession about this that he went and got a degree in biology. And he plotted everything on Lewis Hill. And with a couple of other colleagues, they managed to discover that Lewis Hill actually had an endangered species, the Adobe striped lily, living on it. He had an endangered species on it, and from there they went to Sequoia Riverlands Trust. Oh, actually, it's a lot more complicated than that. They went through a number of partnerships to try to get part of it preserved. In the meantime, the family finally said, we're going to get out of the farming business, we're going to sell this property. Took many years, but Cole Hawkins, thanks to the individual donation from himself and his wife and the Hawkins family, managed to turn over about 100 or so acres of Lewis Hill to the Sequoia Riverlands Trust. They own it now. They use it as an ecological preserve, as well as kind of an outdoor classroom for some of their studies and demonstrations about the ecology of the area, and of course the endangered species of the Adobe striped lily. Lewis Hill Preserve is open generally to the public once a year. They set aside one weekend in the spring when the wildflower bloom is at its peak, and they allow people to come in and hike Lewis Hill and look at the wildflowers, and for free. And it's time well spent. If you ever get a chance to do that, they usually have it in March, April. Final place. Right outside our door, the Golden Trout Wilderness. And this is big. If you look on the map of Tulare County, Golden Trout Wilderness has more space set aside for it, I think, than any other feature in the county. Maybe Sequoia National Forest is more. And it's a very interesting ecological environment. Bill Tweed's story on our website of the Golden Trout Wilderness describes this very well, but it's, again, otherworldly. It's wild. There are species there that thrive and no place else. It's named after the California state fish, the golden trout, which actually gets its color from the minerals that seep through the mountains into the streams in which the golden trout lives. A gentleman, Arliss Walker, fell in love with this place, loved it, and he spent a lot of time there, both he and his wife, and they were pretty satisfied that the golden trout wilderness was going to remain relatively untouched, because it didn't have much industry and it wasn't being developed at all, and it's very remote. It's kind of hard to get to, until he learned that the state was actually going to start harvesting timber and other things from the Golden Trout Wilderness. Well, Mr. Walker, with the help of, is it Bob Barnes? Advocated for taking the Golden Trout Wilderness and making it a wilderness area in which development would be very limited, if at all. Again, it was another example of just a person or two with the dedication and the vision to make sure these places were saved for the rest of us to enjoy, and we hope forevermore. Please go to the website and read in detail more about these things. A lot of details I couldn't fill in, as well as many more. Even better, go visit them.